What do I actually care about? That's not an easy question to answer if you sit with it for a long time. What do I care about? That's something I think everybody should be relatively aware of, or at least in the process of figuring out, because that determines so much about what we end up doing with this one single life that we're given. But it's not an easy question to answer. And I have great news for you when you start getting into spiritual work. The question of what do I actually care about becomes so much harder to figure out. Twist. That's one of the biggest challenges of taking on spiritual work, is that it puts you through this phase of questioning every single thing, including putting way more emphasis on that question of what do I actually care about before anything else, before any outside influence, before any rationalization, before any need to defend a sense of self. What is there to care about? It's honestly one of the most harrowing things about the whole process, is realizing how much stuff you only cared about because of strengthening this image that you had of this small self that is fundamentally false. And that can apply to anything. Now, there are some obvious, low-scale interests that we can have. I don't want to name any of them because I don't want to insult anybody who has those interests, but, even if you have a high-tier interest, something perfectly respectable, there's still a good chance that before you start any spiritual work, you have clung on to that interest, that thing that you care about, because of that's what you know about yourself, is that I'm into doing that thing. You can egoically be into doing charity work to save the entire world. That doesn't mean that it's bad. That just means that it's being approached from an egocentric standpoint. On my own end of things, I've always thought of myself as I am the guy who loves movies. Movies were a lot of my entire childhood. And I get older, and I went through a questioning phase of, man, now that I'm really looking at myself and seeing all the ways that I'm just reinforcing some image of myself, did I also just like that image of being the movie guy? Is that the only reason? Am I just trying to go and watch classic movies because they make me feel like I'm checking off the universal boxes of feeling justified as being the movie guy? Do I watch movies just for the sake of that identity? That doesn't really matter, doesn't hold any universal weight whatsoever. That's just one example. And then when I'd go through phases where my stomach just made a weird noise. When I'd go through phases where I wasn't watching a lot of movies or didn't feel any desire to, existential crisis. Wait, I am the guy. I am the guy who likes movies. Why can't I, when you can go through a phase of not liking movies and still by and large like movies. Well, you're going to have all of that kind of stuff. The stuff that is most deeply embedded in you, you're probably going to have to dig through the most if you're going to have any genuine awakening experience. It's just what happens. There's a book that I recommend almost everybody read when they're starting out called Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing by Jed McKenna. With the prologue and the reason for reading it, that it makes almost everybody who reads it really depressed. It gives almost everybody an existential crisis. Because it not so delicately goes right to the core of your most cherished beliefs about yourself and your life and your values and all of that stuff. It's not saying you are wrong for any of those things. It's just saying, question them. Be willing to question them. That's how defensive, and I'm just going to keep using the movie guy identity, because it's just one that I've already brought up, easy to use for an example, but this could apply to all of them. If you said to me some time ago, you are the movie guy, I'd be like, yes, I am. Yes, that is my identity. And then afterward, if you said, actually, I'm not so sure you're the movie. What? And if you asked me to even question it, I'd be so mad at you. That's a sign of how deeply ingrained something is to your ego, is how offended you get by the idea of it being questioned. And listen, I made a whole video recently talking about how I haven't had a great, super strong identity, so, it was kind of easy to give some of that stuff up, but even for me, there's still stuff sitting around that was hard to process. The place where it gets especially hard is, questioning relationships. That's a part of the deal. Another thing Jed McKenna says is that everybody says, they always have some stipulation for their awakening. I want to be awakened, but let me take my job with me. Let me take my wife with me. Let me take all this stuff. Look, you very well may be able to take all those things. But the absolute relentless clinging on to these facets of our life that we already have in place. Those things don't have to, but can end up hurting us more than they're serving us. Even good, high-quality stuff. If we think that it's absolutely needed for this human life that we live. For our sense of self. Anyway, I say that question of, what do I automatically care about? That gets harder to figure out for a period of time, but you do get grand resolutions where it's clearer than ever what you're doing and why you're doing it. But you have to go through the thick of questioning it. Because questioning it drops everything that is false and ego-based about it. To the point where you just get to the innate caring that you have about whatever it is in life, which is synonymous with the innate love that you have for things before any egoic reasons for having them around. Yeah, but it's difficult. And I'll never begrudge anybody for not wanting to approach this kind of stuff. Because, you got to be ready for it. But oftentimes, it's not even you choosing to find enlightenment. It's enlightenment choosing to find you. So you can even keep going on trying to invest a level of care into things that are not relevant to your true self. But truth will find its way through. Yeah. And just be ready for it, and just know that everything is going to be okay. Because everything is okay. Always, in the grand scheme of things. That's the other reason for reading Jed McKenna's work And it's the other reason for pursuing enlightenment, even though the spiritual path can be a depression-inducing one. Because you will survive it. You just will. You will get through to the other side. And the part that will die wasn't even you in the first place.